Hello and welcome to the Volleycast. I am your host, Joe Trinzi, and on the other line, I got my buddy John Grossman. John, how you doing?
Doing good. How are you?
Good. We're going to start a new segment on this podcast called John Nerds Out. John's one of the smartest guys that I know, and he really loves to dive into a lot of the research behind performance and learning and psychology, motor learning, biomechanics, kinesiology. John loves diving into that, and he ends up diving into and reading a lot of stuff that I don't always have time to read, and I read a lot. So I love talking with John. So John sent me a video, and we're going to post a link to that in the show notes. It was by a lady named Kathy Sierra, who's sort of a cognition and psychology researcher. Has done a lot of interesting things, and she's got some pretty good stuff. Before we get into that, just a couple of quick notes. We still got a few more spots, depending on when you listen to it. It probably won't be full yet for our webinar this Sunday that I'm doing with Jeff Liu, the nerdiest volleyball webinar. Jeff and I are going to dive deep into statistics and data analytics, some really specific problem solving for like data volumetrics type stuff. For any of you guys doing off-season research projects, we probably still have a few more spots left in that. We're keeping them pretty limited so that we can just really do a lot of brainstorming and Q&A with that. So you can sign up for that on scoutvb.com. And we got our next webinar, next premium webinar guest locked in. It's going to be Chris Thomas, head coach of Illinois. And we're going to really dive into setting. So it's going to be specifically setting-based webinar. That's going to be for Friday, April 3rd. We'll have a link up there soon. Kind of just locked that in with Chris and got the date and time that's good with him. So we're fired up. He's just one of the best coaches out there. I love working with him and picking his brain. So yeah, guys can go to scoutvb.com and check out some of the stuff on premium webinars there. But for now, we'll dive into this. And so John, what were your initial takeaways about this video that you posted? Why did you send it to me? Why did you think it was interesting?
I thought it was a really nice way of talking about the difference between what you think you know and what you think you're coaching, and then what expert performers are doing, and maybe they don't even understand what they're doing. And I thought she laid out a really nice way of explaining it and making you think a lot about what you're talking to your players about in the gym and what they're trying to accomplish while they're in there.
Yeah, what I thought was pretty interesting is she sort of draws these two circles. And one of them is sort of like what we think we know. And then one of them is what we're actually doing. What we're actually doing is a way bigger circle. And I definitely find that to be true. Having had the good chance to work with some really expert players, national team level players, professional level players. And there's all this stuff that they do. I don't know if saying that they don't know that they do it is quite accurate. So I think that if, I'm thinking of certain things like passers who have high level of mastery, something like that, setters, blockers. I think if you draw their attention to some of those things, that they would understand it. But I think it's not on the forefront of their conscious mind because some of those pieces have become so automatic over time. And like they're no longer struggling with those pieces. It's not at the forefront of their brain. So they don't think, they're not attributing it as the most critical part of their success, even though it might be.
Yeah. I think, we have this perception action loop that's tied together. And I think players really don't understand what they're seeing and what they're taking in the environment. And that gives them, their decision making is what's very important, and they don't understand what they're seeing or why they're doing it. So, especially dealing with a lot of club kids, hey, what did you see there? And their response is, oh, I don't know. I just hit the ball to that spot. And I think when we get older, we start to, it's more of a automatic process, and they don't really think through it. And it's hard for them to explain it. And that was like a big thing. I think the perception part is the big thing that we can't train easily. And that's the thing that we can't, it's hard for us to train. It's hard for us as coaches to explain what they should be saying. So, yeah, just being very careful about when you're coaching players. Hey, do this, do that. Well, why are they doing that? What's the situation? That kind of thing.
Yeah, and what that makes me think of with like expert players, you talk about that sort of perception action loop. Their perception is really incredible. And when you ask them, hey, what did you see there, or why did you do that? They always have an explanation. Here's what I did. Here's what I was thinking. The trick is they have in some ways the opposite problem where they can go down sort of like false rabbit holes a little bit. And it makes me think of like we think of like baseball players have all these like superstitions and these kind of things because as players get more expert, it feels to me like they're so in the game, they're so engaged, they're so locked in that they will pick up on like any little piece that they feel like is contributing to their success. So they have like false attribution problems. So it's almost like with really novice performers, they have like no attribution. They have no idea what causes the success. And then they get to this point where as they get really good, the danger is like they pick up false clues almost. So I don't know if that's something that you took away from that, but that was just kind of something that jumped out to me.
For sure. I mean, I think when, we decide to make an action, say we're spiking volleyball and we're going up and we see ourselves hitting the ball and we saw the seam and, that's where we hit and we got a kill and something. Oh, why'd you do that? Well, I saw, a seam in the block, but the chances are they probably didn't see that seam while they were swinging because they didn't have enough time for their brain to go through that loop. They probably read something earlier. Maybe they saw the middle blocker, leaving late, or they saw something else that made them do that skill or had them do that action. And then when they think back to it, oh, well, I saw myself hitting the ball into the seam. Yeah, I just saw, there's a hole in the block, just hit it there. It's not that easy, and it's hard for you to understand exactly what you were processing, a couple seconds before you did the thing. So
right, it's far less likely that they saw a hole in the block, and far more likely that they saw something a second and a half earlier that gave them a feel that there would be a hole in the block. Because by the time you could see the hole in the block, the ball actually already had been hit into the hole in the block.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. That's a big thing. And so when we get into this trap of talking with expert performers, or, as a coach and you're watching on the sideline and you don't have to be as focused on what the players are being focused on. And you see these things, if you're telling the players, hey, I saw this, you should see this too. That's probably not, or there's a good chance that's not the thing that they should be focused on. And so when you start to draw their attention to different things, that can lead to a lot of problems down the road in their development as a player. So
I think that something that I used to do a lot as a coach that I think was a mistake is I would, I guess, in an effort to speed up their learning, their ability to read the play, their ability to perceive what's going on, I would have them probably hyper focus on something that they were trying to read. Hey, you got to like stare at the hitter's elbow to see if their arm is going back, if they're going to hit or tip. And you have to, I would maybe like over prescribe what they should be looking at. And would you say that is a mistake to direct that too actively?
Yeah, for sure. The big little story that I always remember, I always talk to people about is, when you were with USA, you're telling me about what Karch would look at with a player hitting. And the common thing would be, hey, we're looking at the elbows. Hey, is the elbow back? Is it down? Is the hand forward? And you told me that Karch would just something with their legs when they were spiking or rolling. And that was something that he picked up that he would never have picked up if a coach had told him all the time, look at this, look at this, look at this. And
right. What Karch would say is he was like, it's not necessarily that I was like staring at their legs. He said I would just get a feel that their legs were more relaxed. That would mean that they were going to tip it. And if their legs kind of felt tight, and that was, just getting to hang out. And I had a lot of time to hang out with Karch. I was there and just talk volleyball with him, and just kind of some of those relaxed settings. That is definitely seems to be what expert players do, is they just get a feel for this. Like Karch describes it, he calls it hinky. Something just feels hinky. That's like the word he loves to use that word. And it's like, and Kathy Sierra in that video, she's talking about that. There's like this almost mystical thing that we tend to describe as expert feel or whatever like that is. And the mistake is to sort of like over prescribe what's going to lead to that feel.
Yeah, another thing I would love to talk to some setters about is, why did you dump a ball in that rally when you did that, scored a point with nobody touching it?
Well, if you're a high school setter, it's because the other setter just dumped. So now you remember that you can dump. So you're immediately going to dump the next ball.
Well, for sure. But hopefully we're trying to get our kids a little bit past reactionary stuff. But yeah, you look at some really good, college players. I forget who Minnesota was playing, but there was a setter, I think it was not this past season before, who during the NCAA would dump from the 10-foot line and it would land. And, I'm sure Hugh was freaking out about it. But how did that setter know to dump the ball when she was 10 feet off the net and it was going to land without anybody being able to touch it? And if you asked her, I don't think that she could tell you why. It was just, hey, I have this feeling. So, I think we need to be really careful about what we mandate our players to do, and just being open to them trying and failing, and then asking them afterwards, hey, why'd you do that? What were we thinking there? Why'd you do it there? And trying to get them to understand their own decision making instead of you telling them what to do.
Yeah, there's just that, finding that balance. And I always think of the scene in Forgetting Sarah Marshall, where it's Paul Rudd's like the surfer, and he's teaching whatever his name is how to surf, and he's like gets up, he's like, no, do less. Then he gets down, he tries again, no, do less. He gets down, he tries, and then he like does nothing. He's like, we got to do something, And to me, that's the hard part about like coaching, is like, you can't overscript it. You can't overscript it. The great quote from Timothy Galway is, too much instruction is worse than none at all. But a little instruction would be helpful. So it says coaches is like, we can't say nothing, but we can't overscript, especially when it comes to some of this perception. And it would be nice if we kind of set the environment up so that players learn some of these things on their own. They didn't realize that they learned it. And, for like a player like Hartz that's growing up on the beach in that legendary kind of time when he grew up, and there's just all these incredible players that were playing on beach volleyball in Southern California. And you can't help but soak up some of these habits, and how do we create a practice environment? So that's a really difficult question, but that's what that makes me think of. Can I sort of engineer some of this subconscious learning so my players start making some of these good habits and they don't even realize that they learned them?
Yeah. And, I think how you structure your practices to drive that learning environment is super important, but also when players are trying things, making sure that you're not limiting them, when they make a mistake, but you like the idea, but they kind of screwed up what they're trying to do there. Making sure that you encourage that exploration, especially younger players. We want them to figure out some ways to do some things. Hey, that was a good idea. Like, keep trying that. See what you can figure out there. And I think that goes a long way, as opposed to, hey, we got to score a point, we got to do this thing, and we have to do it by this certain book, and then that creates these issues too of like confining players into these boxes that they can't explore out of to get better. Yeah,
it'd be nice if the practice environment was set up so that a player could explore and have some success while they're doing so. Because it's all well and good to say, oh, don't worry about the score. The player's all worrying about the score. We can tell them not to worry about the serve that they just missed, but they feel like an idiot when they miss a serve. So then they're going to, do all these things. So kind of some of the classic things, obviously, with younger players is like just getting the net far below even 12 and under in height, even the lighter ball, but those get tricky because then they fly all around the court. There's all these kind of like little bit different things. It's like, could I set it up so the player could have some success while they're exploring? Because it seems like one thing that's difficult for young kids is like some of them just, they have that natural human aversion to failure. and then they never get far down the exploration process.
Yeah, I mean, in the end, we're trying to score more points in a match. That's our test, and our study periods are our practices. So we want to make sure we're trying to go through as much as we can during our practices of trying these new and different ways, and being okay with them messing up in practice. A lot of times we'll ask our players, "Hey, how was practice?" "Oh, I wasn't good. I hit a bunch of balls on the net."
Yep.
Okay, but we were trying to hit the ball 4-4, and you're trying it, and we could see that was that's an okay practice for me. If 2 weeks from now you're still hitting balls in the net, then we got to like kind of reassess what we're trying to do here. But making sure that they're trying new things and trying it in a different way, goes a long way in developing that total player.
Yeah, and then to me, it's like the real engineering is like, can you figure out how to put them in a situation where they can try that 4-4 shot and feel like they're having success at it? Because if there's no perception of success, then it doesn't matter what you tell them.
Yeah.
I mean, we can as coaches a little bit. We can try some of that stuff, and depending on our relationship with the player, we can help that process a little bit. But if the player, performs the skill and feels like it did something, that is like 90% of what they're going to feel. Like our pat on the back or kick in the butt is like only like 10%. So it's like, hey, how can I try to figure out how to put them in there and still have them have a little success while they're doing it, while they're learning it.
Yeah, that's a big challenge.
All right. Well, coming up on time here for this, just kind of quick little John Nerds Out section. And I don't know, maybe we'll do this once a week or every other week or something like that. So keep looking for some of this good stuff, some of the research and all that. And we'll keep sharing this stuff.
All right, man. Sounds good.
All right. Well, good talking to you, John. And everybody, like I said, you can go on scoutvb.com and look for those premium webinars. And you can tweet at the Volleycast or shoot an email or whatever like that. And let us know what you're liking and let us know what you want to see more of. All right. That's it.